So I'm going to start the recording. All right, I think we're going. So if at any time you have any questions, please just type them in the chat box and we'll go through this pretty quickly. There's not too many questions about tornadoes on your final, but this is a picture of where tornadoes happen, and they actually can happen in most places in the world, but in the United States we have more tornadoes than anybody, and it's actually because of plate tectonics, the way that our continent's positioned. We get cold, dry air masses coming from Canada and more moist ones coming up from the oceans, and where they collide, that's where we get our superstorms and our tornado cells. And we just happen to have the perfect continent position to give us these huge tornadoes. But there's been others. This is a tornado in India that was incredibly damaging. When we talk about tornadoes in the United States, we generally talk about the, there's the chat, the tornado alley, but it's less of an alley and more of half of the country is prone to tornadoes. We would say like this right here through Oklahoma, and that area is the tornado alley where we have the very highest risk of tornadoes, but actually they're pretty common in lots of areas of the United States. And it's again where air masses collide, and it just happens that that specific mix of cold, dry, cool, dry, and more moist air colliding right in the middle of the country is perfect. A lot of times students have a misconception about when tornadoes happen. This is 2017. As you can see, this was the tornadoes they had from January to June of that year. So many. Whenever there's a storm big enough to spawn a tornado, there's always more than one. There's never just one single tornado, although often we only hear about one because it's the one that caused the most damage, but often they come in swarms and can be really damaging. So tornado season is in the spring and summer. And here's 2016. Oh, I have this highlighted because on your, let me look at the wording, on your tornado questions for the final exam, there's something about, oh yeah, which state does not have a significant risk of tornadoes? And lots of them in the West, but for some reason the exam highlights Nevada. So I found a year where there weren't any tornadoes in Nevada, and I color-coded that to help you remember the answer to that question. It's Nevada. It's a lot of places, but Nevada. And here is, I like this because it just shows this is the trail of a tornado, and they almost always move from southwest to northeast. So this is kind of the trail of damage. You can see the way they track through, and they almost always go that direction. Here is two examples of massive storms. April 27, 2011, on that one day, there were 688 tornadoes. On the one day, which is unbelievable. Here's another example of March 3rd, 2012, 303 tornadoes on that single day. An also common misconception is the vocabulary of tornado watch versus tornado warning. And a watch means there might be a tornado. We've got these air masses colliding, and conditions are ripe for a tornado disaster. If it's a tornado warning, that means one has been seen. So there's definitely a tornado. If they say, we have a tornado warning for these counties, that means there is a tornado. It's either been seen visually or it's been seen on radar. Tornado scale, when we talk about hurricanes next week, we'll talk about the hurricane scale, how we classify hurricanes. For tornadoes, the way that we classify them, the scale, we have the wind speed on here, but actually we assign tornadoes their magnitude after the fact when they go and assess all the damage. So tornadoes are based on the damage and not the wind speed. But hurricanes are different. Hurricanes are based on the wind speed. So try to remember the difference between those two when you're doing it. And here's an example of when they're assessing tornado damage, kind of their checklist, which I think is really interesting. First, they decide what kind of building they're looking at. And so they have a whole thing for automobile showrooms, which I think is so interesting. And then these degrees of damage, I'll show you one. This is the small barns and farm outbuildings. So anyway, these are the things they're looking for. Did the doors collapse? Was there loss of roof panels, collapse of walls? And so within each category, they assign the degree of damage. And then when they get all of that data and put it all together, that's when they decide and communicate the magnitude of the tornado. When it's coming in and we start to get initial news reports, they'll say, oh, this is an EF4 tornado. And it's more of an educated guess. And then after the fact, they go in and then give it its official number. And sometimes it's different and sometimes it's not. It just depends. So here's the degrees of damage from a tornado, an EF0 to an EF5. They're the big ones. If you saw Twister, they're that was the one they were trying to get, the truck and all of the gizmos in. But I've seen damage from EF5s where it's actually scoured away the foundation. So there's nothing left. So an EF0, I like this picture because it shows how damaging it is, because you think, oh, it's an F0. That's just a baby tornado. But clearly it can cause significant damage. F1, F2, F3, F4, and then of course F5. Everything's gone. Students always like to know, where was the last EF5 tornado? And actually, I think this might need to be updated. I can't remember the last time I looked at it. Probably a semester or two ago. But looking back, these are, the big EF5 tornadoes. So you can see that one day, April 27th, there were 1, 2, 3, 4 EF5 tornadoes on that single day, which was unusual. You have to go back to the 70s to see that many EF5 tornadoes that happened all on the same day. So here's one of the examples is an EF5 tornado. This isn't one of the case studies. Sorry, my phone rings when I'm logged into Gmail, drives me bananas. Anyway, so you can see how the swath of damage where the funnel was actually on the ground. That's actually a redundant thing to say, but the tornado, this one was 1.3 miles wide. So the funnel, the part that was touching the ground, 1.3 miles wide. that seems so huge to me. Thinking about a tornado that big, but you can see the damage here. So when I taught in 2007 high school earth science, I did a tornado unit, and I taught them that the biggest tornado was 1 mile wide. But now that assessment's changed. This one was 1.3 miles wide, and this Moore, Oklahoma, this one got it was on the news a lot because it happened during the day, and several children died in their elementary school when it came through. And it actually followed a path that in 2013, a similar path to another big one that had happened in 1999. And here's, some of the results. That's what the tornado looked like, one of the pictures. And so here's the path in 1999, and then here's the path in 2013. You can see it's wider. And then 11 days later, we had the El Reno tornado, which wasn't in the news at all because it wasn't deadly. I think there was actually very little damage. It happened in the middle of nowhere, which is a perfect place for tornadoes to happen. And its funnel was 2.6 miles across, which just is staggering to me. Amazing. Tornado safety. These questions are on your final exam. So here we go. Overpasses are terrible places to wait out the storm. And it's a common misconception that, like, if you're out on the road, you would seek shelter under a freeway overpass, right? If that was your only option. And that comes because there was really famous footage of a news crew that got caught in a tornado, and they hid out underneath this overpass. And there used to be hardly any footage of tornadoes, and now there's a ton because everyone takes out their cell phone and gets nice videos and posts them to YouTube. So now we have like a plethora of tornado videos, but this was one of the first that was widely distributed. And so it kind of started this misconception that you would want to hide out in an overpass, but actually that would be a horrible place because the winds have a smaller place to go, and so the wind speed actually increases, and so people can get swept right out of those. They say the best thing to do if you're in your car and you can't, drive away from it, is to get out of your car and lay in a ditch. That's safer than to be in your car. I don't know if I could do that. I've thought about that before. If I could honestly get out and lay in a ditch on the side of the road and wait for the tornado. I don't know. Another misconception is that if a tornado is coming towards your house, that you should open the windows to equalize the pressure. So hopefully, nothing gets sucked out of the house, but that doesn't make any difference whatsoever. You should not open your window. You should just stay as far away from your windows as possible, so you don't get hit by projectiles. Get low wherever you're at. Just get as low as possible. And this one's not on the exam. Let's see. So Joplin's one of your case studies, and hopefully you'll enjoy learning about it if you haven't learned about it before. I had a student in a previous semester that was in high school when this happened, and she talked a ton about what it was like afterwards and how horrible it was and how many classmates died. And this was incredibly devastating. And it was an EF5 tornado that happened in the very middle of the city. As I said before, the middle of nowhere is a way better place for the tornado. And in your lab, if you remember, or maybe you haven't gotten that far, that's okay. It's not due till Saturday. That you'll go back to Google Earth. We haven't done this for a while. And you'll toggle back and forth before and after the Joplin tornado, right before it happened, right after it happened. And we have you look at the high school. But actually there's a stake center, an LDS stake center right across the street from it that was totally destroyed. But it was rebuilt so much faster than anything around it. It was back for those members, and it became a place of refuge, literally, for the community. So let's see, we've talked about tornado formation. There's not like, it doesn't get technical at all about how it forms. They usually happen in the afternoon because the air's been the warmest. It's had all day to heat up from the sun. It's where air masses collide. Yeah, there's just not too much about this on the exam, so I'm just, and when I mean too much, I mean not at all, so I'm just gonna kind of go through all of this. These are, CNN had these beautiful pictures of tornadoes a couple years ago that I really liked. Okay, let's see. So this right here, this part of it is called the head wall. And whenever you see that kind of descend from a mass of clouds, then you know you're in trouble. So this is kind of when it kind of pops out. And then it dissipates. So I've said before, winds, the tornadoes tracks usually go from southwest to northeast. They can occur anywhere in the United States, even over mountains. Every state averages 2 tornadoes a year, which is crazy to think, but every state averages at least 2 tornadoes a year. So the misconception that it can't happen in mountainous regions, this is Salt Lake City, 1999. This was an EF2 tornado that hit downtown Salt Lake right as they were building the conference center. And actually they had this big crane out and it just whipped around and caused a ton of damage. This is Sequoia National Park. This is the highest elevation tornado that's ever been documented. Happened right there at the top of the mountain. And then this is Rexburg, 2017. My chat keeps leaving. Oh, Crystal, I didn't see your comment till just now. I am so sorry to hear that. It was an unbelievable tragedy, I think, for everybody that had to suffer through it. I'm sorry that happened to your family. So because I have most of my students are in Rexburg, even though it's an online class, a lot of them are always surprised to see the tornadoes there. So this is 2017. Here's 2016. See, this is a good place for a tornado. Right here, no houses, no cities. Here's 2015. I'm not sure what building that is. I want to say Snow, but I can't remember. 2013. They're actually pretty common. The weather in Rexburg is pretty volatile, as you know if you've lived there. Let me check the exam questions and make sure we covered all of this. We talked about what to do if you're driving in a car. We've talked about that most tornadoes happen in the spring and early summer. see. I'm going to put this one up. What conditions favor the formation of a tornado? I kind of went through that pretty fast. But the warm, moist air coming from the south, formation of a supercell, and cooler, low pressure coming from the northwest. So those all favor tornado formation, but very flat land is not typically a condition that favors tornadoes. Tornadoes do happen on flat land, clearly, but it's not why there's so many tornadoes in the Midwest. Talked about Nevada not having significant risk. We talked about what a tornado warning is. We talked about not opening your windows to equalize the pressure. We didn't say this. This is in your reading. I think it might have been, it was one of your reading quizzes. What's the natural function of a tornado? And the reason we have them is to move air from one place to another. Whenever there's an area of low pressure, that just means there's less. So it has to kind of fill in to equalize what's going on. So tornado is a very efficient way to move air around. We talked about how the damage scale is, the magnitude scale is based on damage. The deadliest outbreak in U.S. history, it's one of the case studies, but it's April 2011, was the deadliest tornado outbreak. And that is it for tornado exam prep. Next week we'll do, we will do hurricanes. And then the week after that, we'll do a review of the comprehensive stuff. So what you can expect to see from the additional chapters on your final exam, which is comprehensive. And that'll be it. So we've got 2 more meetings left. And please let me know if you have any other questions. Thanks for coming. Let me know if you want to retake a lab or an assignment. If you're in a group project, I'll be setting those up tonight. So lesson 12 will open up later this evening, and I'll send an email to anyone that's in a group project and let them know it's started. And I think that's it. Do you guys have anything else? All right. Well, great. We are actually getting out on time today. That's nice. I will stop the recording. And thank you so much, and have a great night for sure.